The purpose of this video is to show you additional ways that you can add students to an intervention in mass. We will be using a training server for this. There are no real students or real data shown. Any likeness to a real name is purely coincidental. The first way we will show to add students to an intervention in mass is first to create a student group. In order to do that, I'm going to come over to Utility Apps and Manage Groups. On my Groups page, I'll see any groups I've already created or that I've been added to as someone has shared it with me. But to create a new group, I'm going to click Add New Group. I'm going to name this group. This is going to be my Tier 3 ELA Group 3. I want to have a student type here. I want to make sure it's active, and then I have a start and an end date. It is going to default to the day you're creating the group, and then 1 year later you can edit this as needed, and you can put in a description if needed. The next thing is to add your members. The first way to do that is through a single member entry. So in order to do this, you're just going to search for your students and add them to the group. Once they have been added, you'll see a green check mark with a plus sign. That means they are newly added. So you can just repeat that process and add students as needed. You also could add multiple students at a time. In order to do that, you do need to have their state student ID number. Now in our training server, the ID numbers are short 5-digit numbers, but in our state server, we do have those 19 or 2 numbers. Those are our state ID numbers, and that's what you will need. And you would place each student ID 1 per line. So just to show you how it works, I'm going to show you adding some of the students that are in this server. And once I have the numbers on the lines, I can hit submit, and it will add those students to my group. So I can either add individually or multiple at a time. When I'm finished adding my students, I can hit save. So now I've created this group. I can filter on my dashboards using this group, and I can also add all of these students to an intervention all at once. So I'm going to go over to my dashboards first of all and show you that. In my filter data, now that I have a group created, I can come down here to student group, and I can apply that group as a filter. So I'm going to click on that and then click off of it. And now I'm looking at my data only through the lens of the students within that group. So I could check their attendance, I could check their behavior, I could check their academics and their assessment scores using that lens. But now that I have this group created, I can also add them to an intervention very quickly. So I'm going to come over here to Utility Apps and MTSS Interventions. This first page is the All Interventions page. This is just going to show me any active interventions that I have. So if the intervention I want to add these students to is already on this list, I could just click on it, open it up, and add the students. If I'm starting an intervention from scratch, I'm going to click on Intervention Bank. I'm going to find the intervention I am looking for, either using my search or my filters. So I'm going to search for a Tier 3. ELA K3, and I'm going to add some students to this Spire plan. So I'm going to click on Use This Plan. The first tab I get is my Student tab, and instead of adding students individually here, I can add them from the group. So I'm going to click on Add from Group, and I'm going to choose my group and click Add Students. So this serves two purposes. I can filter on my dashboard using this group now, and I can also add these students to an intervention very quickly. I'll continue through creating the intervention by adding any additional staff members, choosing my schedule, which is my school year dates, and then I'll ignore this student support resources, and then I can start that intervention. The next thing I'm going to show you is another way that you can add students to an intervention in a large group. In order to do this, I'm going to grab students from a teacher's roster. If I am a teacher, when I come over to dashboards, all I see is classroom, and this will limit me to only seeing students that are on my rosters. If I have an admin view, I will be able to see these other dashboards as well. So in order to add students by a roster, I'm going to come over here to Classroom, and then I'm going to come to Student List. When I come to this page, if I'm a teacher, I will already see my staff value selected here, and I'll get a list of all the students that are in my classes. If I am in an admin view, I will need to go to Filter Data, and I'll need to select a staff member that I want to view. So maybe I'm going to change it over to Mr. Anderson and select that. Now I have a list of all of Mr. Anderson's students. I do want to point out that you only see the first 5,000 records in this list. When looking at rosters, I don't think that would be an issue of having more than that number, but just keep that in mind. Now that I have my roster here, I could select students individually, or I can also click on the button at the top, select all, and then I'm going to come to Actions and Add to MTSS Intervention. Here I can search for any active or pending intervention, or I can also create an intervention by finding the plan that I need. So I've already created one. I just want to add these students to it. So I'm going to search for that intervention, and I'm going to select it and add the students. I'm going to get a notification that the students were added, and I can go to that intervention page. So if I have students on a roster that I need to add to an intervention, this may be a good option for you. One thing to consider is that if you have individuals that are providing intervention services and they need to be able to place students in interventions and enter data, if they do not have a roster of those students in Power Teacher, if they are in a teacher role, or if they do not have access to the SIS admin portal, they cannot complete that process. So individuals do need to have either the ability to log in through the SIS admin portal, like an administrator or a school counselor does, to view all of the students in the school, if that's the option you choose, or they will need to have a roster of the caseload of students they are providing interventions to, placed on them in a period outside of your bell schedule. This is something that we had to do very commonly for summer camp, and there is a separate video that shows you how to do that.